Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. My name is Jason James, and I'm going to be sort of chairing this evening. So today we're going to be talking about AI, and our speaker is one of those people who seems to achieve an awful lot. So extraordinary CV, and I think we're very fortunate to have carved out the time in his schedule to have him speak to us today. So Ren Ito is currently the Chief Operating Officer of Sakana AI, of which he's the co-founder. So that's a Japan-based AI startup, and he'll be telling us a lot about that, so there's no point me trying to explain it. Prior to that, he was the founder and partner of Solaris Fund Management, based here in London, and invested in a lot of AI and other startups. And among those, he was CEO of Mercari Europe, which is a marketplace app, and ran its IPO. And before that, he was a diplomat with the Japanese Foreign Service for 15 years, and obviously went to lots of places and did lots of things in that capacity as well, including representing Japan on the World Bank's board. And so alongside his business activities, he continues to be involved in that side of things as well, public policy debates, because he is a senior fellow at New York University's School of Law. There's plenty more on here that I could tell you about, but I think that will probably have to do. So over to you, Ren. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Jason, for your kind introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ren Ito. Thank you for Daiwa Foundation for having me in this very, very interesting opportunity. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. The topic I was given by Daiwa is obviously about the artificial intelligence. I know that most of you are already fed up with reading and talking and listening about the standard story about AI. So I try to be grateful for your time and then giving you something which is not explicitly written in the press, or something I have one of my thoughts which is kind of which might be counterintuitive to you, so that we can provoke some conversation afterwards. And then before getting started, just briefly about myself, which Jason has already most eloquently explained for me. But the reason why I just wanted to prepare this slide explaining my brief background of moving from the Foreign Service to the Japanese e-commerce company to the AI is not just for the purpose of sharing some random episode about my previous career in this setting. It's more about I want to pick some of those experiences to talk about the broader picture of what the AI is facing in this current day. So one of which could be how the international collaboration can work in the AI space. What will be the Japanese comparative advantage in developing a new AI technology or innovation? So I'm trying to use bits and pieces of my experience from my previous life to address those broader issues which AI is facing in the present day world. Moving to the agenda today, just as I promised, the number 2 is my focus. I tried to pick 1 or 2 or 3 some topics which might sound counterintuitive, or which might be not fully explored in the regular press. So it's kind of like a read between the lines from what is being widely discussed right now in the AI field. And then moving on to some lessons learned about what can be happening next. So before getting started, I think it's worth starting with the history of AI. It's a very, very brief history of AI. I think nowadays, especially since 2022, people are getting so excited about a generative AI. We are jumping up and down about how the very brief prompt can come up with the various different images or the sentences. So I think when we are talking about AI, we are thinking about this generative part of the AI, which is actually the 3rd generation of the AI. Before we have this 3rd generation of AI, which is a generative AI, we have two predecessors. So when the AI gets started, you may recall this gentleman's face, who is the famous Brit named Alan Turing, who was considered to be the godfather or the grandfather or father of the AI. So when he gets started, and then for the next 20, 30 years, AI is pretty much about the prediction. So AI was helped, the artificial intelligence technology was all about predicting what will come next. The good example is the AlphaGo. So when you're playing Go or chess or shogi, it's all about you predicting what your counterparty's next move will be. So AI is fine-tuned and sophisticated so that they can most precisely predict what the next move could be, where the, the chess is moving to, where the Go is moving to. That kind of prediction is the very basis of the AI. This is where AI gets started. Once the prediction is done, and once you get more Siri technology, compute power is getting fully readier, what is happening is the one step further, which is a recognition. So it's not just about predicting what will happen next. It is getting much richer and wider in terms of the application. So what the recognition means is starting with, this is like a first version, this is the second version. First version is you're taking a look at this picture and then pointing your finger to the dog. And then you're asking the AI, is this a dog or not? Dog or not, dog or not? Is this human or not, human or not? So the AI is answering this 0 or 1 question of not just predicting, but recognizing what this object is all about. And then this is based on the humongous amount of the data collection and data analysis. So by training your model with tons of data, and then the model will become clever enough to say for sure, with more likelihood, that this can be a dog or not. So this is the first stage of the recognition. Once the recognition piece is getting more and more expanded, what is happening is something like a present-day autonomous driving. So you install the camera in your car, and then you're detecting all the moving and non-moving objects surrounding your car. So the AI can tell you that, oh, the one you're seeing right on the left-hand side, this is a car. This is moving, so we have to be careful. But whereas you will see some traffic light, and then once you recognize the traffic light, your next attention is going to what is the color of the signal will be. And then they understand that the color of the signal is changing. Or in more difficult and sophisticated case, you might be detecting the human being jumping into the road, and then which is giving you the signal that you have to stop the car or you have to change the course of the car. So prediction to the recognition, this is a kind of the natural progress. So once you're sophisticating your technology more and more, and then if you have more data, you have more compute power to process those data, you can naturally progress from the prediction to the recognition. But the reason why the AI has been considered as one of the most spoken subject matter, but not necessarily practically applicable until 2020, was because the only use case was winning the Go game, or this is already great, but recognizing what is this? Recognizing is this dog or cat? Recognizing where is a moving car is. But the breakthrough happened around 2020. The history of this breakthroughs happened in 2017. So when the 8 scholars or researchers working in Google was publishing a paper named Attention is All You Need. This is the famous paper which became the foundation of the present-day AI, the generative AI. So what this paper, Attention is All You Need, is talking about is in order to understand, for example, in the language model, in order to understand what this word is about, what this sentence is about, they suggested that let's identify a word which receives most attention from the other words. So in other words, instead of reading the text in the chronological order, like I live in London and I am Japanese. Instead of reading from the front to the bottom, the transformer paper is suggesting that let's identify the word which has most connotation, most connection with the other words. And by doing so, you can make the compute spend more efficient because you don't have to read from the beginning. You focus on where the attention is about. So you can like optimize your compute spend and you can decipher what is written in that document in a much more effective manner. So this is one thing. The second thing is the compute power becomes much more readily available, much cheaper. So nowadays, you can buy the humongous amount of the compute power through the cloud computing. So you don't have to like install the gigantic computer at your home or your lab to process your data. So because of those two technical advancements, the level of increase was skyrocketing. If you see this number, I think let me start with the right-hand side. So comparing the 2000 and 2020, so they're comparing a whole different sets of the AI technology. So this is never the apple-to-apple comparison. But for example, the technology which started in 1998, it needed more than 10 years to reach the perfection. Perfection in a sense that which is reaching the human performance. But the technology which started in 2018, the line is almost going vertical. So this shows that because of this transformer paper, because of the availability of the compute power, the advancement of technology can happen much, much more quicker. And then you can get something which is almost miraculous, which was not even predictable in the previous days. This is the background, and I'm sure that I'm not boring you anymore. What the takeaway I want to give you in this conversation tonight is starting with something related to this dynamics. As you may interpret from my explanation, basically what I'm saying is bigger the better. What I'm saying is if you train the AI model with more data, with more compute power, the performance is increasing. This chart is showing that the amount of the data, amount of the compute power you're investing in the model have the positive correlation, almost identical correlation with your performance. So it doesn't sound too refreshing, but it only means, it basically means that more data you're giving to the model and then more compute power you're using to train the model, definitely, performance is getting better. In other words, if you are cash poor, if you are data poor, there is no chance that you can get the model whose performance is as good as this one. That was the standard theory up until yesterday. What is happening now, this is the part of the reading between the lines part, but what is happening now is, this is my hypothesis, we are slightly reaching the end of the period when bigger the better was true. I am not like trying to promote my own company, but many of the companies which started in the past few months or the past couple of years are not trying to replicate the same recipe of bigger the better. All the AI companies named which you're familiar with, OpenAI, Anthropic, these companies are following the recipe of bigger the better. They're raising a lot of money, they're buying a compute power, they're collecting a lot of data, and then training the model to make the model as big as possible so that the performance is guaranteed to be better. But what is happening nowadays, if you look at all those many startups which are starting in the past few months, not so many startups are doing following the same recipe. And Sakana, my company, is one of them. So our hypothesis is going against the bigger the better concept. So what we are saying is, what the bigger the better model looks like is this bridge. So you're making the concrete bridge and make it as strong as possible. But it is inflexible. If some typhoon comes, if some storm comes, this bridge might break. And then it requires a lot of investment to make this bridge. But again, if you invest a lot, it is guaranteed that a performance is getting to a certain extent. What many other guys nowadays trying to do is inspired, especially our company, inspired by what I call the nature-inspired intelligence. So what the small ants are doing, what the school of fish are doing, is the individual ant is small, individual fish is very small, and then the brain of the fish is also very small. But once they're collectively interacting with each other, they're making happen the performance, which is equivalent to the bigger the better model. So in this case, instead of creating a concrete bridge, Ant is creating similarly functioning bridge by communicating to each other, by using the collection of the smaller brains. So there are a lot of those theories about how this nature-inspired intelligence works, how the training of the model can be inspired and can be modified by using this concept of the nature-inspired intelligence. But in reality, in the practical terms, what many of the companies, including ours, are trying to do now is connecting the smaller models. So instead of creating a gigantic 100 billion parameter models, our suggestion is, what if we are connecting, combining, bundling hundreds of 1 billion parameter models? I mean, precisely speaking, it's a little bit bigger than that, 7 billion parameter. So instead of like creating 700 billion parameter models, what if we bundle hundreds of 7 billion parameter models? What the performance will be. So this is a starting point. And then many of the companies, including ours, are coming up with a whole bunch of different hypotheses to see what is the best way of connecting those models. One of the company will say, oh, using something named agent. This agent is going back and forth between the different base models and then understanding what is the optimal configuration of bundling the models. But in other words, by using this technology, you don't have to train the model from the scratch. You are using existing smaller scale models and then bundling that to see if that model is performing as good as a bigger model. Another great thing about this approach is flexibility. So just imagine if you are a big AI company and investing hundreds of millions of dollars and creating one single big model. 2 years later, government might say, hey, I don't want the model maker to include this ingredient in the model making. It can happen easily. Or your users, clients will say, I don't like the model which is using my personal information as a training data. I just cannot stand that, which can easily happen. And if that happens, if you are creating the model from the scratch with such a humongous one, you just cannot take out one of your least favorite data from the model making, because you are training the model for a long period of time, and then the data which you put inside a box 2 years ago is already deeply embedded in the model. It is no way that you can take that out 2 years later. But by combining like a smaller base models, it is up to you, it's totally up to you. It is so flexible. If you believe that you don't want this base model, or if you don't want this base model using whatever data you don't like, you just exclude them and then just bundling the other models. So this is about what is practically happening now. And in terms of going against the conventional idea of the bigger the better. The second takeaway I just wanted to share with you is this is totally different from the model. When we are talking about AI, or when we are reading about whatever articles on the newspaper about AI, people are talking about the very either rosy or scary picture about AI is completely changing our world, our work, our technology. So for example, we casually say this, if I introduce AI into my bank account or my investment portfolio, AI might be automatically telling me which share to buy, which share to sell. In the healthcare arena, people easily say, oh, by combining AI into the drug discovery, we can expedite the speed of the drug discovery to 100 times. But that is kind of the illusion, I have to say. Because AI, when we are talking about AI, our AI innovation is not reaching the application layer. Let me explain this. I think the best way to explain is by using an analogy. Everybody is using, let's say, Windows operating system and Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint operating on top of that. So let's forget about Windows for a while. When I'm using a computer, I created this deck by using Microsoft PowerPoint. But in order to use the PowerPoint, conscious or subconscious or unconscious, there is an operating system named Windows or Mac or iOS or Android, which is already functioning as the basis to enable the application to work properly. This is the reality of the internet and software business. But nobody, so when I was thinking about enhancing my creativity, I immediately say, oh, I want to buy Word, I want to buy Excel, I want to buy PowerPoint. But I don't necessarily say, oh, I have to buy Windows, because it's already subconscious. What is happening in the AI world now is we only have the equivalent of the operating system. So all the names, household names you're hearing, GPT-4, Gemini, Llama, Claude, potentially Sakana. This is about operating system. So everybody, including people in the industry or the outside the industry, are jumping up and down talking about the great achievement of the AI. But most of the time, it is about the platform. It's about the foundation layer. And we have to have a foundation layer as a precondition of having an application layer. That's why it is so important. But one thing we shouldn't forget is we are still in the stage of making those platforms, the foundation layer. Of course, the making of the application is happening simultaneously. So there are tons of companies who are working on the application. But in reality, until the platform layer is ready, there is no such application which is working perfectly, properly to change our world. So my message is not a negative or the pessimistic one. I'm just saying that all those names you're hearing are not the application layer, but a foundation layer. So we have to wait until some killer application like Twitter or Facebook or Microsoft Word or Excel, their AI equivalent have to happen based on the amazing progress in the platform layer. The last thing is about the geopolitical dimension of the AI development. This is a map showing that the red dot is showing the countries or area which have some sort of AI legislation. So blue dots represent the country which doesn't have a substantial progress in AI legislation. So you're seeing that so many parts of the countries, so many parts of the world is already having some sort of the progress in making a new AI legislation. US, the Biden Act is taking various different forms, but they have the maintaining American leadership in AI, promoting the use of blah, blah, blah. They have a lot of legislation happening, legislation or executive orders happening. EU, maybe GDPR is not necessarily AI, but EU is now in the process of enacting their AI Act. China, they have tons of the AI legislation, of course, in the more restrictive manner, but which is happening. So what is happening now is respective areas or countries are making a new legislation or putting together the government support packages. I will be jumping to the slide later to understand what will be the national strategic advantages, what will be the power of allies later. But this is a fundamental slide talking about what kind of intervention is potentially happening in those areas. Accordingly, it is not a coincidence that there are several or handful number of companies emerging as a national champion. Yes, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta, these are the household names. Many of you might have heard of these names. But there are a lot of different companies which is flourishing outside the US, and especially they are taking the form of the national champion. France has Mistral AI. So DeepMind in the UK was a great example, which was already acquired by the Google. So it might be a UK company, US company, you might argue differently. But there are a couple of different companies popping up in a different jurisdiction, different countries. And it is not a coincidence that respective countries have their own legislation, their own requirement of the safety, the standard, some criteria. So I think the trend which is happening in correspondence with the government approach is more and more we are seeing the emergence of the national champions from respective countries, from India, from China, Japan, Korea. So this is kind of the new phenomena which we are observing in the present day. Just wrapping up in 2-3 minutes. My last topic is about the geopolitics of the AI. So capitalizing on a national strategic advantage is my subtitle. But by enacting so many different legislation or putting together government support, what is the objective of doing this? In one word, every country wants to be competitive in AI. What kind of packages they're putting together, what kind of legislation they're putting together, it is mostly about, of course, giving some subsidy, giving some money to their AI academics in AI, or the AI startups, AI big companies. So they're subsidizing their national champions to flourish more and more. But also what we should not forget is the support packages almost always include to ensure the people and the companies' access to the compute power. Because one of the scarce resources in the AI industry is the compute resources. So you are seeing that NVIDIA's share price is going up and up and up, but that is based on the scarcity of the chips. So even if you're starting a company here, unless you can access the humongous amount of the compute power, you have very little chance of surviving. So some of the packages include your accessibility to the compute power. Also, encouraging the education to the AI talents so that you can support the students studying more and more AI so that you can be a great entrepreneur in AI. Also, this is another keyword, but AI literacy. So UK, US, Japan, any government is putting together a package so that the overall literacy of the people's AI literacy should be going up. It is not just giving some online courses to everybody saying that this is a 30 minutes YouTube video, you have to watch it, and then you can understand AI better. It's not as simple as that. It may be taking the form of one of those government services are being strongly powered by AI. Some issuing the passport, the border control, you're introducing a lot of AI components one by one so that people can feel that AI is a part of your day-to-day life. And then government is pursuing those options of what kind of measures or the policies will have much wider repercussion to enhance the overall AI literacy of their people. Changes in social contract. I think most notable example is this debate that once you're introducing AI to my industry, X% of the workers will be losing their jobs. So displacement from the employment is one of the most imminent challenges of introducing AI or any new technologies. The response will be vocational training to support those people who are losing their jobs. But the repercussion is people are talking about, maybe you have heard about this conversation, that some people argue that we have to restrict the speed of AI development. We have to put a pause in AI development. A couple of years ago, hundreds and thousands of people signed a petition saying that AI development have to slow down up until we understand the real safety issue. What is a component of the AI? So if you are interpreting this subject matter into the negative connotation, what happened is we have to address the crisis that people are losing jobs. Secondly, we have to slow down the AI development up until you see the maximum clarity that this is not harming the humanity and the human civilization. This is to be discussed. The last slide is the power of allies. This is what I found very interesting about living in the UK and working for a company in Japan. I'm now working in the private sector, nothing to do with the public policy making. But if you're taking a deeper look at the legislation in Japanese legislation, UK legislation, EU legislation, and US legislation, if I were advising the Japanese or the UK government, imitating what is written in the US legislation doesn't make a lot of sense. Because US is already a winner, just as you can see in this slide. There are a lot of strong winners in the US already. And then so many smaller companies are chasing them, trying to compete with them. So which naturally means that in order to learn the lessons, learning the lesson from the US might not necessarily replicable in your own country. But small to medium size, I'm not saying the UK and Japan is a small to medium size, but not the largest economy, learning from each other, collaborating each other makes more sense than just copying and pasting what the US is doing in their public policy and the private sector arena. So that's my third takeaway, and thank you very much.